Chapter 20. Ernesto. She is too popular, Papa. It's actually infuriating. Ernesto listened to his son, who spoke with a mix of frustration and admiration. His sweet boy, always his pride and joy, had fallen for Anya, a vampire. Ernesto couldn't help but wonder if Santiago fully understood the depth of his feelings. Boys kept talking to her during every period we had together, Santiago continued, his brow furrowing in annoyance. It was not as though Ernesto was surprised. He had expected that this would eventually be the case between the two of them. He had never been successful in his attempts to separate them, and thus he stood on the sidelines, watching his son's friendship with the vampire girl grow. Throughout the years, Ernesto would try to lie to himself, tell himself that Anya was just Santiago's little amiga, and that if Santiago was smitten, it was only due to his loneliness. Ernesto had been sure that school would rectify that problem, but he had been wrong. Santiago and Anya weren't spending every moment of the day together anymore, but it seemed they were closer than Ernesto wanted to believe. If it wasn't Anya waiting on the doorstep, it was Santiago watching the window and waiting for the black BMW to pull into the driveway. Things had only begun to look up for Ernesto when Santiago turned 13. Ernesto watched the way his son finally put some much-needed distance between himself and Anya, avoiding her gaze and her presence. Again, Ernesto tried lying to himself, rationalizing that Santiago's distance was due to his becoming uninterested in her. After all, he had started school and was meeting new people. It was only to be expected that Anya, his little childhood friend, would become a thing of the past. This fragile lie that Ernesto told himself would crack each time he caught his son's eyes gazing at a distant Anya with an intensity so raw it was almost unnerving. I couldn't get any studying done during study period, so now I'm behind. Even though the years he spent with Anya, talking and observing her, he knew she was an overall good person. She was loyal, level-headed, and thoughtful. There were even times when he thought she was caring. But it was her secrets that disturbed him. The things she didn't say and kept hidden away. Those secrets could eventually hurt his precious son. On top of that, there was one fact he could not overlook. She was a vampire. Anya consumed blood. Human or animal blood. Blood was a symbol of life, and that was her diet. Javier could spin Ernesto a million stories, trying to justify this fact to him. But it was black and white. And then I twisted my ankle during gym period. Now his sweet son was sitting in front of him, feeling all sorts of emotions he had never felt before. If Ernesto were a good father, he would explain to his son that it was jealousy he was feeling and try to reassure him, but Ernesto couldn't do that. Instead, he felt the flame of injustice ignite inside him like grease fire, hot and burning. He had not cursed God when he took away the love of his life, Isabella, but now that his sweet boy was falling in love with a monster, he would have to break his son's heart, and for that, he cursed God with everything he had. Papa? Santiago tugged at his father's shirt. Ernesto looked at his son. His beautiful golden brown eyes were filled with confusion. He felt a diplomatic smile begin to creep onto his lips. Santiago, he said, grabbing his son's hand that had tugged at his shirt. It felt so small in his. I understand that you're getting older. You'll be 14 soon, and then 15. Anya is a very sweet and beautiful girl that you've started to develop a crush on. Papa! Santiago exclaimed, dropping his silverware and pulling his hand away from his father's grip. His jaw almost dropped as low as a fork that was on the floor, stained with salsa verde. That is not what is happening right now. It's okay, mijo, Ernesto smiled reassuringly. I had lots of crushes on many different niñas when I was your age. Eso es normal. Papa, stop, Santiago said, covering his ears, his face turning completely red. I don't like Anya. Good, because you will never be with Anya, Ernesto finished. At this, Santiago uncovered his ears and looked at his father with bewilderment. Perdón? He asked. You will never be more than friends with Anya, Santiago. You will never date her, nor will you marry her, Ernesto repeated. It's best that you give up on those fantasies while you can. Santiago looked at his papa, still wearing a look of disorientation on his face, as though he understood the words but not the meaning. ¿Por qué? Because, Ernesto kept his voice cold, you are the grandson of Javier del Toro, future heir to DT and Associates Corp. Your future wife will be someone who benefits this family and the company. It will certainly not be your employee, someone who is no more than a trained killer. Santiago's heart started beating quickly. Anya's not... Anya... But he was at a loss for the rest of the words. A killer? Ernesto raised an eyebrow. I think you know as well as I do what she's capable of now. More than that, I'm sure you've been wondering yourself what kind of person Anya is. Santiago swallowed, trying to find his voice, trying to find the right words, but all he could say was, She is my friend. Ernesto leaned in conspiratorially. Are you sure about that? Santiago pushed himself away from his papa. What do you mean? Are you saying she's been pretending to be my friend? There was a slight tremble in his voice as he posed the question. She is our bodyguard. Don't you think that befriending you would have made her job easier? Ernesto asked. Santiago turned away from his papa's gaze, his hands instinctively going to his collar. Ernesto noticed a golden necklace around his neck that had never been there before, but he recognized the necklace immediately, and suddenly a crack began to appear in his lie. Santiago shook his head. I'm sorry, Papa, he spoke softly. I understand that Anya works for us, and that she comes from a different family, but that doesn't mean she's not truly my friend. Ernesto's eyes narrowed as he focused on the golden necklace around his son's neck. If that is the way you see things, he shrugged, getting up from the table and trying to appear indifferent. In reality, he was preparing to deliver the final blow. At the end of the day, Santiago, when the time comes, you will uphold the Del Toro line and marry someone honorable, not a killer. I hope I've made myself clear tonight, Ernesto finished, not bothering to wait for a reply. He left the kitchen, trying to suppress the guilt that overtook the desperate confusion he had left on his son's face.